to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebestin, the co-founder of Retire Repurpose, alongside Ben Tages. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you're listening to us on the radio. Maybe you found us online. Regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, and subscribe. Better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you would just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch after working a career 30, 40 plus years and then just shutting it off on Retirement Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our series on retirement happiness. Society tells us that retirement is the time when we can truly live and be happy. But does retirement make good on that promise? Furthermore, what makes us happy in the first place? Today, we talk about doubling down on your abilities. Your abilities are a combination of natural talents and acquired skills. Identifying them is an important step into discovering your repurpose. In this podcast, Ben talks about the importance of truly knowing oneself, and he poses questions to consider so you can identify and utilize the abilities you have gained through your working years. Enjoy this episode. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We're so glad that you are joining us today. We are continuing our series on retirement happiness, and we're going to get down into the crux of doubling down on your own abilities. So this is going to be another play off of last week's show. We're going to kind of talk about all of that here in the moments ahead. Just a quick reminder, we have a Facebook group dedicated just for you, retirees. It is called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. This is the latest and greatest, best content that comes out of Retire Repurposed right to this group. All the latest news. You can go check it out. And the way that you do that is you go to facebook.com. Many of you already on Facebook. So the next time that you're on it, not now, especially if you're driving, but go to Facebook and search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. This is a private group, so you just got to click join. But I want you to be part of this growing community of people that are ready to make retirement more than what America says is the standard. That is the key. All right, today we are continuing, again, this series on retirement happiness. We're now about 8 episodes deep. We spent the first 7 episodes just talking about the treasure piece, the relationship with money, how money plays into a role into retirement. We just got done saying that this particular podcast, we don't talk about the financials. The truth is that we do. It's just going to be in a different context than what you're probably used to hearing it. Ben Tages joins me on the show here today. Would that be a fair synopsis of kind of how we have not steered away from money, but the way that we've talked about money is probably in such a way that you're not used to hearing it, especially from some retirement professionals?
For sure. Yeah, and I think this show definitely doesn't provide financial advice, as we know, but does it give you thoughts and help you realize that, like these last few shows do, that money does play a key role in retirement, right? But it's more about the way you look at money, the way that you were raised, the way your upbringing, right, and how you look at the financial side of your retirement has to do with who you are and who you were and how you look at work. All that plays a significant role. So yeah, we don't. It is a show that's more on the non-financial side, but some people have asked me, why are you going so much more to financial side? Well, we're not. We're not giving investment advice. What we're talking about here is it's a mindset shift from understanding the role money plays in your life and then looking at it through the proper lens.
You know, I've been in this business now with you for approaching a decade, and one thing that I've mentioned on the show before, but it really caught me off guard, that a problem that retirees have, either approaching retirement or after they retire, is really spending their money and or watching their account balances go down, which is kind of the point of retirement, where you work, you save, you create a nest egg, and then you use that money to retire on and create income. Again, we're not going to get into the crux of retirement planning, specifically the financial, but that's that's like a psychology mindset conversation more than a financial conversation.
Yeah, it is, Jared. I mean, one of the guys on our team has his master's in psychology. So he actually, through working with him and talking through, my work with clients for 20 plus years, I have seen this play out time and time again, where we have to have the discussion like, you saved this money. When you were saving this money, did you save it so that you can just live on the interest on it, or did you save that money so that you could spend it someday? Mm-hmm. And usually the answer is, well, no, I planned on saving it so I could spend it. So again, it just changes the outlook. It changes the way you look at that wealth, right, that you've accumulated, and helps you maybe see it as something that needs to produce income for you. So again, while this show is focused on the non-financial side, sometimes because it's so important, yep. Jared, I mean, the Bible talks about money more than really any other topic 2,300 times plus. So again, we have to start here. Again, making sure people's mindset around what money is, a tool, versus just skipping right over that.
Yeah, so many people think that running out of money is like the worst thing that can happen in retirement, which certainly isn't a great situation. But on the flip side of that, it's having enough, and even more than enough, but really being in a spiritual bondage to it, and that's just an unhealthy way to roll. You'll never become the fullness that God wants you to if your mind is really wrapped up in the money that hard.
Yeah, I mean, where are you putting your identity? Where are you putting your hope in, your faith in? It has to be beyond your wallet, right? Yeah. Because that is the quickest way when things don't go well, mm-hmm. to get caught up and to really lose yourself in that. So I think it's important that we do talk through that first of all, and then really moving into more of the purpose aspect.
Yep, absolutely. Again, we spent several shows talking about the treasure aspect. Now we're moving more into the talent side. We started that last week with really gets into leveraging your experiences. We talked a lot about reflection. Certainly not a topic that probably comes up a lot in the retirement conversation, but really an important aspect, especially in the onset of retirement. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think right away it becomes really imperative, because you're just getting through your working years. You have to look at what made work good for you, because like it or not, there were parts of work that were very, very good for you. The schedule side of it, the pieces of work that you enjoyed. You got to reflect back on that, because those are the things you're going to look to keeping in your life in retirement.
If you do the things that we say on this show, you're probably spending some time each day, preferably at night, doing a little reflection as well. You said something last week I thought was interesting, where if you don't reflect on an experience, it's just that, it's an experience. And I just don't think that that's really, we're not living our best or utilizing our experiences to the greatest potential or impact that they could possibly have.
Yeah, experiences turn into wisdom from reflection, right? I mean, so you can just experience things over and over and enjoy it and get some joy and short-term happiness from that experience. But if you turn it further into an actual something that you reflect on, mm-hmm. then it becomes wisdom. And that goes for negative and painful ones too, of course.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So if you missed last week's show, go back, check that out. It's called Retirement Happiness, Leveraging Your Experiences. And we're going to kind of continue on this track here today, talking about doubling down on your abilities. Before we get to that, though, let's talk more just really about purpose here in general. I mean, obviously, the name of our podcast, our platform, is called Repurpose. The name of your book is called Repurpose. I did come across this study that made this link between purpose and also mortality rates. This was actually back in 2019. It was done by the Journal of the American Medical Association, where it finds an association, again, between life purpose and mortality among U.S. adults older than 50 years old. I read this report, and essentially what they did is they surveyed about 7,000 people at or above 50 years old, and they asked them a series of questions and rated their basically purpose score, and then they followed these people around for about 5 years. And what they found is that people that scored low on the quote-unquote purpose score, the mortality rate was twice as likely over the course of 5 years. in contrast to the people who scored higher on that list. Is it a direct correlation? No, and of course, anything with health, it's hard to find really kind of the silver bullet, so to speak, the thing that does it. But as studies continue to come out on this topic, it really does, again, want to draw a correlation that if you have purpose, not only does it make life more fulfilling, but it can also add years to your life and probably quality of years to your life as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I don't need a study to show. I mean, would I need a study to give you the statistics on how long people live if they don't have purpose and do? Yes. But I get to watch people who keep purpose in their life in retirement and watch them live so much better. I would highlight on the quality of life and what their lives look like in those years. But certainly if this study showed that participants who had the lowest life purpose scores were twice as likely to have died, that is interesting. Right. That is certainly backing up some of the stuff that we continue to talk about. And there's a lot of studies out there like that. But what I look at is when I meet with a retiree and you can see that they're active, that they're keeping purpose in their life. Sometimes they are actually working yet, albeit different. You know, I deal with a lot of retired executives, a lot of people that, again, could have retired years earlier, didn't because they chose to stay in their careers, and now they've kind of changed and, again, repurposed into something different. The ones that are really connected, both connected to their community, but also connected to their greater life's purpose, a cause greater than self, those are the ones that, a lot of them do. I mean, I'm meeting with them for years and years and years. They seem healthy. They seem happy. Their life just seems so much more full than somebody who has followed more of the quote-unquote American dream retirement, where they're just kind of living day by day and not probably finding something bigger than themselves. And guess what? Like we've talked about before, when they live with purpose, the vacation, the feel of, yes, taking a break from the ongoing work of trying to live with purpose means those vacations are that much better, right?
Yeah.
The time, that earned rest we talk about, that is so much more valuable. So I don't look as much on them passing away sooner, although I would believe the study. I look just at what I see with clients that are living with purpose is just being happier.
Yeah, I think there's a fulfillment aspect to this, and probably a spiritual aspect as well, where we can, again, you're walking into God's fullness more. And I don't want to turn this into a theological debate, but again, the idea of retirement, very difficult to find in the Bible. It does talk about, really living after God's heart. And there's no time aspect on that. It doesn't say you do that when you're young, and then when you turn 65, you don't. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic here. So I think that is really, what it comes down to. This idea of purpose, it's more than just, I think, just kind of having something to do. Again, Ben, you have been in the retirement planning business for 20 years. I think it's becoming a little bit more common to hear commentary on, hey, once you retire, you got to find, have a little purpose, make sure that, you're keeping track of your schedule. But really it goes deeper than that. How would you describe that?
Well, yeah, it's so much deeper than just, hey, don't forget to volunteer once a week. Don't forget to, get involved in a community of people and check that box, right? It is not checking a box that I've volunteered or checking a box that I've stayed in community with my golfing buddies. It is way more than that. It's deeper. If you want to have a truly great retirement, it goes beyond just a simple, you got to kind of make sure that you do a little bit of volunteer time. It's a lot deeper. It means your entire outlook. You're really viewing your retirement through the lens of what can I do today to add value to others?
Yep.
And I think whether you're retired or not, that's a great lens to make decisions by, is how am I impacting those around me? You have better days when you do that. You find that you build community when you do that. You also find that the days off are that much better. The days off meaning, hey, when I'm going to go and really take some alone time, take some time where I can enjoy hobbies that I enjoy, that is just heightened because you're able to say, yeah, I earned the ability to do this. And I feel better about my life when I'm again looking through the lens of how can I serve those around me.
I think the opposite is true. If you take this piece out, Is life bad? Not necessarily, but I think it amplifies the good in so many ways more than just spiritual, physical, mentally, psychologically. It seems like it's kind of the gasoline that gets thrown on a retiree's life. So let's spend some time here today talking about your abilities. And again, we call this show Retirement Happiness, Doubling Down on Your Abilities. This is the next phase of this after you have some reflection. I wanted to start this show and just talk about this. I think it's pretty common that you hear amongst like self-help circles. If you watch motivational speakers, they say things like, you got to double down on yourself. Again, we're calling the show Doubling Down on Your Abilities. And I think that there is truth in that type of wisdom, but it comes with a caveat. And it comes down to the idea of you kind of really have to understand who you are. And if you don't have that, it's a tough place to start.
Yeah, it really starts with looking inwardly, reflecting on who am I, right? And God has made us each unique, very unique. And I love that about, dealing with people and seeing where their unique talents lie, right? So I love watching people that are just way better at certain things than I am. I've always felt that I learn the most by just listening to others. That's one of the beautiful things about our work. I get to meet with many, many, many people throughout the day that are in their 60s, 70s, that have huge wisdom, but also are really talented, right? They've been able to do things in their life's work that taught them a whole lot more than I know about those subjects. So where we can help them on retirement planning, they can help me on so many parts of life. I had a great meeting the other day with one of our clients who was retired from the medical world, and he was able to just pour into me some guidance as my daughter begins to kind of follow that journey. There's so much to learning from others if we just listen.
Yeah. Another way to look at it too is if you look at like leaders, movers and shakers, people who are out doing big things, whether they're young or they're old, it seems like they not only are they have a lot of talent and skills and abilities, but they also are really honed in and they know who they are. They know where to stay in their lane. So again, to reiterate that point, I think that that's a really important thing that we need to start off talking about. Okay, so we already kind of mentioned it. There's going to be two facets to abilities. The first one are talents. The second one are skills. Let's start with the talents first. Ben, describe that to folks.
Yeah, so I look at a talent as something that is God-given. So this is something that you're somewhat born with, right? And some people, Jared, they're just good at working with their hands. They're good at being mechanical, whether that be carpentry or actual mechanic work. They've got that ability, okay? It's a talent to be just good working with your hands. Corresponded that with a skill, right? And I look at that same example of a carpenter or a mechanic. The skill is the actual tools and techniques, the ability to actually do the work. So they've given the God-given talent of being good with their hands, and then a skill, which is something that's learned or acquired.
Yeah, that's a great way to define that. Do you think that people, and more specifically retirees, underestimate the skills and also the talents that they have? Do they maybe just not value those as much as they perhaps should?
I think both. I think they definitely feel as if they have less talent, meaning, hey, they see all the younger generation coming up and they're so good at this, they're so good at that. Many times the actual talents that they've been given become more useful they see it as being more useful for the work that they did, right? Yeah. Versus what they're going to use in their retirement. So I think it's definitely something that I'll see people say, yeah, people just don't do it the same way anymore. I hear that a lot, when really we should be doing some of the things the same way. Yes, there are new techniques that people will use in any part of business industry, but there are pieces of their work that haven't really changed, yet there are key components to what people have always done that should continue to get always done the same way. These are non-negotiables. These are things that just because they're using a different piece of technology does not change how important it is with the communication skill that they might have, right? Just because they're using a different medium doesn't mean that the ability to communicate with another person, that is the same and always will be. And you can go through almost any piece of work and look at what shouldn't change. And I think those are things that retirees need to see. Yes, I still have the core, many times more of those core abilities than somebody in the workplace today.
Yeah, people skills, leadership skills, running a business, those are those are pretty timeless, right? They don't really change, even though the technology and techniques within that change. They all stay the same. I have to bring this up as well. Retirement should be a continuation of these things. I think we need to just spend even a moment here on this show again to say this is now the beginning of you utilizing these skills, talents, abilities in a new way. And I think that we can never say that enough for retirees. It's not the end. It can be the beginning of the next phase of life and should be viewed that way. Give people maybe a couple of questions. Let's start with talents. What are some kind of self-reflection questions retirees can ask themselves to kind of get a better idea as to how they're built?
All right, so if I'm looking specifically at talents, I'm going to ask, what are things that you naturally do well? Kind of those things that came easy for you while working. These are things that you just felt like you always had a knack for. Sometimes people will see, where were you told that you excel at a certain area? Like you've heard that throughout your career, like you excel at that area. And I think it's important you ask yourself the same questions that I just brought up, but bringing them outside of just your work. Think about your volunteer time. Think about your time with your family. There are things that you just like to do because naturally you were good at them. That's how I really dive into what are those God-given talents.
I think as a retiree, I don't want to say that this should be easy, but it should be easier than you asking maybe a high school senior, like, hey, what are you good at and who are you? And these poor young kids get asked this all the time before they graduate high school.
Yeah, and they're supposed to go to college based on their answer, right? And which is incredibly difficult. But you're right. If you're a retiree today, you've lived it, right? You've lived and you've worked and you've experienced so many things. You should start to know, and it should be much easier to find out what are those God-given talents.
Yeah, and again, I think it's an exercise that we all go throughout our work time. A lot of people know my background. I came from TV weather, and so I always wanted to be a weatherman. And I thought that meant going and working for a National Weather Service or something. And then I got into college, and I realized that was just like way over my head. And that's for the really smart people. But I always knew I could tell a story. And to this day, I joke, but I'm being serious. Like, I've never made money unless it involved talking. And here I am on the radio saying that. But there is something true in that. And thank God, God has given me the ability to speak, because I can't swing a hammer, and I'm not really good at anything else, certainly not fixing cars.
But what you're doing is making a difference, right? When we speak, when we create, when you're, as I've seen you do public speaking, and it moves an audience. And when that happens, Jared, what happens is the people in that room, there's a message there, and as long as you're speaking and you're bringing a good message, that God-given talent, it's probably better now because you've honed your craft and you've learned and acquired certain things like skills and how you do it. But again, you're making a huge difference.
We got about a minute left. Let's talk about skills. Again, what are some questions that retirees can ask themselves to, again, understand themselves in this department?
Well, I think let's start with there are probably things that you had to do in your work that you didn't like specific skills that you had to do them, but you didn't necessarily enjoy. Start there. Like I think people can learn a lot by the things that they didn't enjoy, the things that they thought were harder than they should have been for them. And then I think it's best to look at the things that you wished you could have spent more time on. So many times, whether it be at work or just life gets busy, we can't do. We feel like we're good at something, but if I could just put a little more time into it, I'd be great at it. Yeah. And I think that's what retirement can be. You can look at the talents and the skills that you've had, and maybe haven't been able to even pour enough time into it and become truly great at something, and not just good, like great at that skill. I want to make sure people remember today that it's like we started this show with, people have value today. Retirees have huge value. You were created uniquely, right, with certain talents and skills that you've learned to make a huge difference. You're uniquely qualified today to really walk into the best years of your life.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this conversation on doubling down on your own abilities. is. If you would like a copy of Ben's book, Repurpose, the Untold Story of Retirement in America, just go to our website, retirerepurposed.com. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.